discussion and decision-making occurs in private. With this being the case, I am asking you to work with myself and others like myself in working toward a solution where parents and children have a choice in masking, ridiculous quarantines, that do not threaten precious learning, and where our schools kept free from any indoctrination, liberal, conservative, or whatever. Since Courtney Davis was extended the courtesy of being able to meet with several of you in October in a meeting where dialogue can be exchanged, I am requesting that you afford myself and other parents and taxpayers the same courtesy. I am a forgiving, imperfect, pragmatic, and principled person, and I would rather work with people than have to work against people. Last week's board meeting literally felt like a punch in the gut when you quickly ran through universal masking without any indication or warning. But rest assured, we will never give up on our kids, or anyone else's kids, until they have the freedom to breathe without masking in school and without ridiculous and unreasonable quarantines. I'm leaving my phone number for any of the members of the board or Mr. Eating to reach out to me, and I'll anxiously await your call. Regarding the candidates for the open BOE seat, I implore you to seriously consider all of the candidates. While in recent years, many boards have become places where yes men and women are chosen, with all that is going on in terms of attacks on our freedoms and lack of trust in public schools, I hope you will look for strong and bold leadership, rather than a board member who will always toe the line and vote unanimously to match how the other members of the board are voting. While there are rumors that a person has already essentially been chosen, and we have heard about discouraging members of the public from running based on perceived political beliefs, I'm hoping that none of this is true. Every candidate deserves equal consideration with no regard given to whether or not they will rubber stamp whatever is brought to them to the BOE for a vote. If I can leave you with one thought, it is that it's never the wrong time or too late to do the right thing. Please follow your conscience and change your course where appropriate. Please also help in making the important decisions in the district as transparent as possible. Ethics and principles are always important, and truth is absolute. God bless.
And I want to say, first of all, that I'm not anti-mask. It bothers me that we have the stigma, my group has the stigma of being anti-maskers, and we could not be farther from that. We are for American freedoms, and we believe that anyone that wants to wear a mask should wear a mask. And we just believe that if we don't want to wear a mask, and we don't want our children to wear a mask, that they shouldn't have to. So imagine how disappointed I was last week to hear of the universal masking. So what I would like to say during my public comment is I would just like to make everyone aware that in August, 3 of my concerned parents and myself had a meeting with Craig Edding, and he actually told us, I can actually quote him, he said, he will not mask the children unless it's mandated. Well folks, I don't know if you realize it or not, but it's not mandated. So I'm not really sure where this came from last week, and I'm very disappointed because I was actually singing the praises of our superintendent and the board that he makes his recommendations to for standing up for our children and not making them wear a mask when it was not mandated. So the other thing I would like to say also is that I know that you're all hiding behind the ridiculous and unlawful mandate, quarantining, but what I don't understand is even when we got those numbers last week, there was nothing about the number of children that were quarantined that got sick. And I question that because these children are not getting sick. My daughter was quarantined a couple times last year. Her friend was quarantined 3 or 4 times, and it's like 20 days of school for being quarantined, and never got sick. So I don't understand, and I'd like to see the numbers on the number of children that get sick from being quarantined, showing no symptoms. Not the children that are sick. Don't include those children. The children that are well that you quarantine. Thank you.
Us 12 who grandfathered into Lakeshore. Tonight, I know you're going to fill a seat here, but I just wanted to speak a little bit about the man I think that should fill it. Speaking on behalf of Richard McCoy. Richard understands that it is imperative that every child have access to an excellent education. He will be a loyal servant to the needs of Lakeshore community and all students, a community in which Richard takes great pride. Whatever the issue Richard is confronted with, he will find solutions that meet multiple interests and needs. He will serve all interests to the absolute best of his ability. I have 100% trust that Richard will contribute in sustaining the high level of performance at Lakeshore and will cultivate ways to lift them to the next level. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I know without a doubt Richard will be a valuable board member here at Lakeshore and will be committed to improving the quality of education for each and every child. Besides my own father, who retired as a global engineer for Fairmount Minerals, Richard McCoy is one of the most intelligent men I have met, and I highly recommend him to Lakeshore School Board. Thank you.
Everybody wear them again. September 30th, mask optional. October 12th, put them back on. When the county mandate was lifted on September 30th, I was really happy that Lakeshore didn't mandate masks. I consider that a big step forward. On October 11th, the board and Mr. Eating not only took a step backwards, they took a giant step backwards and fell down a flight of stairs. Think about this. We're making kids suffer because of the need for adults to feel safe. Your actions on October 11th failed the teachers and staff who have continued to act as a masked police. The saddest part is that most everyone blindly complies without asking any questions. This exercise showed that freedom can be taken away from our students, and frankly, not too many people complain, except for some of us, of course. I'm not against masks, but I'm against mandating them in schools. There are certainly people here who disagree with me, and obviously this board and superintendent disagrees with me. So please bear with me as I give you a very simple reason. Kids getting ill from COVID are not a big concern. Does it happen sometimes? Sure. But how often, and how does it compare? So here's some data from the CDC that I gathered last night, and I'll give you some copies with my sources. Since the start of COVID, January 2020 through October 9th of this year, there have been 513 COVID deaths in the 0 to 17 age group in the entire U.S. 513. In that same time period, there were 1,018 deaths due to pneumonia in that age group. Twice as many pneumonia deaths compared to COVID-19 in that age range. Or how about this? Total U.S. COVID deaths, total, all ages, 713,000. Kids 0 to 17 accounted for less than 1/10 of 1% of those deaths. If you're still not seeing my point, let's try to put the COVID fatalities in perspective with other causes of death among young people. Here's some raw numbers from the IIHS that I got last night. Now, these are from 2018, but I think you get the point. Deaths in teenagers in 2018. Suicide, 2,824. Motor vehicle crashes, 2,486. Homicide, 1,857. Can COVID deaths happen in a young person? Sure. But how big of a problem is it compared to every other thing out there that can kill you? For our young people, it's way down the list. As part of our engineering community, we're always asking ourselves, where should we work? Where should we focus our efforts? According to this data for kids, we should be more focused on deaths of car crashes, since there are 5 times as many car crash deaths for kids compared to COVID. I asked this board and superintendent why we are putting this undue strain on our schools by mandating masks when COVID among our youth is far down the list of concerns. It makes no logical sense. So it must be something else. Money, power, politics? I'm not sure. As my own kid's allergy doctor told us a few weeks ago, COVID is a political disease. He told me that the mask won't stop it, and eventually we're all going to catch it. The only question is how sick we get when we eventually do contract it. And as he told me, and I have just told you using actual CDC data, kids are not significantly affected. So please just do what makes sense. Go back to mask optional, and let these kids and teachers breathe freely. Thank you.
People have either been fearful or faithful. Did you know in the Bible it says to fear not 365 times? It's one per day. If we believe in God, we are to fear not. I think that what we're facing is an epidemic of fear. I think that people that wear the mask all the time are afraid, and that's okay. They can wear the mask, but people that don't fear COVID, why do we have to wear the mask? I also believe that we have been losing a lot of our personal freedoms to be safe. How safe do you want to be? Are we supposed to be as safe as, let's say a car doesn't go over 35 miles an hour? That's safe. Everybody wears seatbelts. Motorcycles, most of them have to wear a helmet. As my son said, you need to wear shoes and a shirt to go into stores. Why not add a mask? We could. But at what cost? How much freedom to be safe? We all went through 9/11. We all know that when we fly, we have to remove our shoes. We can't have liquids. That's from, let's be safe. It's up to you guys. You're the board. We elected you. You're supposed to be taking our voices to Lansing. You're supposed to be representing the students and the parents. Do you want to teach the kids to be fearful, or are we teaching them to be faithful and protect our freedom? Thank you.
I was born and raised in this community along with my dad and sisters, and I find it disheartening to hear that this meeting may only be one of appearances and not one with full disclosure and transparency. After so many could not attend last week's meeting due to sporting events and convenient virtual conferences at the high school that kept parents out of the building, it was quietly decided that universal masking would be reinstated. After a recent meeting with 3 board members and the BCHD, which didn't need to be made public due to the 3 or less rule that you are aware of, I know, and not just in my gut, that there was a promise of a hefty financial windfall that would come if universal masking was reinstated. Thus, masking was immediately reinstated, with money soon to follow. And with regards to quarantines, maybe if we could find the one elusive number that is missing from the shared document last Friday, board decisions could have been more balanced. What number is that, you may ask? Where is the column that tells specifically how many quarantines this year then resulted in new COVID diagnoses? After a community member called today to the central office, they were given the number 16. 16 new COVID cases came from 269 staff and student quarantines. That is a shockingly low percentage of new resulting COVID cases and a shockingly high number, 85%, of students not able to get their education when they are COVID-free and symptom-free. That shows a flaw in the quarantine process. Where is that column to share with the community? Where is that data? That data would most definitely open eyes and change minds, and if it didn't, then politics won and our kids lost for the 18th month in a row. Which brings us to tonight. The board needs to be balanced. At one time, it appeared to be, as recently as September 20th, when Mr. Allen and Mr. Boucher expressed their frustration and disappointment in the BCHD, and what they explained appeared to be an authentic desire to have no more masks and a more regular year for our kids, while the others seemed to stay quiet. However, this changed on a dime when the vote last week was unanimous to reinstate masks based on that low number of 16. Also, I am aware that within a day or two of board member Tanya Jenke graciously volunteering to help Lakeshore out of their employment issue, that one Jay Meath was being encouraged by board members to apply for Ms. Jenke's vacated seat. I have directly heard this in multiple conversations in a variety of social circles. That same name, Jay Meath, kept coming up. I've never heard the name. I've never heard another name. So I would be interested to see if I am proved wrong. If not, then the decision for Jay Meath was indeed being probed weeks ago. And if you vote for someone different, someone who is not a protege being groomed for that position well in advance of tonight, then I will hope that that means that balance and transparency will be restored to this board. Thank you.
First thing I came in here and when I see the board all messed up and you're talking to us, when your mic wasn't loud enough for us to hear, we couldn't even tell which person was speaking. And I think about the poor kids that are having to look at teachers that are masked up like this, and they can't even understand what they're saying. There is no facial expression, there's nothing going on. That was my first thing I wanted to bring up. The second thing I want to bring up is that I think with what happened last week at the board meeting, it has made us lose a lot of trust for our board and our school. And while my grandkids no longer go here, thank the Lord, they all pulled them out of public schools and now they're in Christian schools. Thank the Lord that they made that choice, and it wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't an easy choice at all. My mother graduated from Lakeshore, I graduated from Lakeshore, my kids graduated from Lakeshore, and yet They're all out of your school system now. So we have lost all kinds of trust for you, but I'm here today, not for my grandkids, I'm here for the other kids that are still here, and they're looking at this the whole time. And I am pro-choice. If you want to wear a mask, wear one. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear one. But you are doing a great disservice to our children wearing a mask, because they cannot see what expressions. You might as well paint your face a different color, blend into the background, but they can't understand you because they're not seeing what facial expression you have. And that's all I have to say.
Got 3 kids at Stewart, and I'm on the PTO there.
Your name, ma'am?
Oh, Cassie Bolt.
Thank you very much.
So I would also like to piggyback off of the masks covering the faces. My youngest in the school system is in kindergarten, and she is seeing the speech pathologist for 10 to 15 minutes once a week now. And it's all developmental sounds, according to the speech pathologist. And she did say that the masks are definitely making it harmful for those kids in that age range because they cannot see the full face. I personally emailed my daughter's teacher, and she said when she goes over the letter sounds, she'll pull her mask down for a few seconds for her words, and then she puts it back up. And at that age, they need to be constantly reinforced and shown the correct way in everyday language, plus more, they need to be able to see the correct way to make the sounds in order for their brains to develop those sounds and then be able to say it correctly. So that's a huge concern for me as a kindergarten parent, and I am considering pulling her if we cannot figure out a way for the young kids to see full faces. Also, because that's not a full quality education in my opinion. On the other hand, my 2nd grader comes home and says that his teacher pulls down her mask. She'll tell the kids, oh, back up a little bit so I can pull down my mask and talk to you and teach, which is great that they can see her face, but then all the kids that are sitting there is still in their masks, and they want a mask break too. How is it okay for their teachers to get breaks throughout the day while teaching, and our children are sitting there forced to wear the mask? My son said sometimes his will slip below his nose, and the kid next to him will pull it up for him. How is that sanitary to have another child touching my child's face mask? Those germs are now, he's breathing those in. That's not healthy. We've all had COVID, so they're not going to be getting it and spreading it anytime soon. But yet, my daughter's teacher says, oh, you gotta keep it up so you stay nice and healthy. She'll come home, Mommy, the mask keeps me healthy. I'm like, I've already had COVID, sweetheart, it's okay. But, so those are huge concerns for me. And I think I had one more thing, sorry. Okay, so when is the mandate going to end? I know with the health department, we did have parameters with that, and yet we've gotten no end date for this. Are there a certain amount of cases, numbers? How is this going to happen? We're very concerned. And my kindergartner, again, also comes home with dirty mask often. You can tell she put it on right after eating. It's disgusting, it's soaking wet. She sucks on it, she chews on it. One of her little friends has chewed a hole in her disposable mask. These 6-year-olds and 5-year-olds do not know how to wear a mask. I could see middle school and high school, that makes more sense. Can we maybe come up with a different quarantine guideline instead of following the health department? Say if you're close contact, wear a mask unless you get symptoms and then go home or stay home. Or why are we doing it at all? At Pawpaw, they recently changed their quarantine guidelines and they're mask optional, so now it's recommendations. Unless they're in the same household, then it's required. I think that makes more sense because in the school setting, I don't think that there's a massive amount of spread, especially because some kids are still wearing a mask. But we need to have the option for their mental health, for the little kids, for their own hygiene, and the teachers need a way for the kids to be able to see their whole faces for their development. Otherwise, they're not getting a quality education at Lakeshore.
One more minute.
Okay. That was basically all I had. I'm just concerned. I hope that you guys choose a candidate for the board position that is going to be an advocate for our children, not only for their health, like their physical health, but also for their mental health and their developmental health. Thank you.
My name is Lloyd Bolick, spouse of a Lakeshore teacher. I stood up here a couple
agree with choice, because we make choices every day. Choices to whether or not to have coffee in the morning, choices whether or not to be polite and courteous, let the driver in the morning. We all face choices every day. And I really can't say anything different than what a lot of others have said this evening. The only thing that I can really add to it is that I've never dealt with a situation where if someone else doesn't wear a life preserver, I drown. That makes absolutely no sense at all. Because if masks work, then no one should be afraid of anything. Because everyone would have a mask that is uncomfortable with COVID-19, would be able to wear it and protect themselves, and the other person would be free to use their own free will and choice. The only thing that I can suggest is that for all the choices that we make throughout the day, there are more and more people that disagree with the Board of Education mask mandate, and I would encourage others to show up in numbers to speak out against this, because we're facing the same issue here in Waterville, where the Board of Education doesn't seem to listen to anything that us taxpayers have to say. The only thing that I would also mention is that we'll also have a choice to recall the Board of Education and vote somebody else in as well. And I'm not saying that, we have to be nasty or rude or anything, but, you can always use the ballot and recall your board election if you choose to. But there's not really much I can say to change your guys' mind. I understand what your position is, but I don't think it's the right position to basically railroad every other taxpayer here that disagrees with you. I think that you guys need to be a little bit more open with the opinions of others that are here. Thanks.
Okay, my name is Richard McCoy. I'm from Stevensville. Moved here in 2000 and raised my 3 kids here. Let me start with the prompt. Did you have a question? No. Oh, we'll get right on to the prompt. How do you envision yourself working as a collaborative member of our board? There's an old saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Clearly, there are many things I'd like to understand and, would want to approach this position from a learning standpoint to get up to speed on how you guys operate and what kinds of things that you do. I would show commitment, and I would be willing to put in the work. I believe in being a servant leader. I would endeavor to bring a value add, bring new ideas to the table, willing to try new things, willing to admit our mistakes and address the things that aren't working. I believe in questioning the consensus opinion sometimes, and that healthy skepticism is necessary to avoid mistakes and to improve. That being said, I believe that a position on the board is fundamentally a place where we serve the parents of our district, that they are our customer, and that our highest priority is preparing the kids academically in complete cooperation with the parents. Moving to the next part of the prompt, experiences. And I apologize if this is going to sound like a resume, but I'll just try to get through it. I have an electrical engineering degree from Christian Brothers University. I was 12 years with General Electric. The first 6 was as a field engineer. That involves applying math, physics, and computer programming to real-world engineering projects in the automotive, steel, aluminum, and paper-making industries. Involved a lot of troubleshooting and diagnosing of industrial systems in the heart of our manufacturing economy. I then moved on into software development, where I became a software project leader to build smart engineering systems. In 2000, I moved here with my family to join Whirlpool. My first assignment was on a project called Internet Connected Appliances. I later moved into people and strategy leadership, focusing on innovation. And I finally ended up in working, 2 minutes, a lot with intellectual property, where I moved into education in 2012. I was a professor at Lake Michigan Catholic College, an adjunct professor. I got a Woodrow Wilson Teaching Fellow, and I spent a couple of semesters at Western Michigan pursuing a master's in teaching, but an opportunity came along with the USPTO, and I became a patent examiner. Patent examiner is basically a cross between an engineer and a lawyer. Moving on to skills, I feel like my number one skill is a parent. I raised 3 kids. My 2 daughters are out in the professional world now. They're on their own. They're very successful. My son is a senior at University of Michigan. All 3 were great athletes and great scholars. They were all leaders on their teams. I better hurry, right? So I'm very STEM-oriented. I'm very law-oriented, entrepreneurial. I helped found Great Lakes Montessori School. Financially minded, budgets, investments, yada yada. Viewpoints. I believe in the American dream. I believe in the core tenets of our founding principles and our founding fathers. And I believe we have lost our way as a nation, and we need to return back to our founding principles, including returning back to God. Quickly, just what would, example of a common goal, I actually thought to myself, well, what are the goals? So I looked up the 1920 District Improvement Plan. I read it, I loved it. Reading, science, math, engagement, writing, these are all the building blocks of what our kids need. They need to understand why it's important, and they need to understand it's their way to the future.
We're done, but I'll give you 30 seconds if you wish to finish up.
Thank you. Glad I got through that. With my last few seconds, I'd just like to say that my grandparents grew up in the Depression. They had nothing, dirt farmers and sawmill hands. My dad joined the Navy at 17 to relieve the burden off of his family. Became an electrician, worked until he was 70 years old. He demonstrated how in one generation we can go from poverty to wealth. Generational poverty disturbs me to no end.
Should